Meetup, everyone. Thank you for coming out. If you have not logged into the Wi-Fi, the SSID is Meetup. Password is, just read on the screen. YouTube, don't read it. So the agenda for today, first I'm going to go over sponsors. First URL for the space and also the Meetup groups for the website. SDG for the pizza and beer. Also, I want to talk about the Open Source North Conference. If you have not had a chance to attend this past year, it's a really great conference, and so I encourage you all to check that out.
Two nights on Thursday. Also, they allowed us to give away tickets for that tonight, so we'll do that at the end. So if you're available to go, very cool.
Moving on, we'll start with hiring and looking for work. So is anybody hiring, looking to hire? Is anybody looking for work? Maybe they know somebody looking for work, Charlie.
Well, then,
Stand up and talk.
all right. It's Charlie. Looking for work. I know the beat stack. I'm way more into React right now, though. Coming to it, and then I don't know, and I'm dabbling in Java.
Also looking for it with Andrew. I also know the beat stack. Also dabbling in Java. Also checked out some good AS and stuff.
We're always looking for presenters, so if you're interested in presenting here at Angular event, we have a board on the Meetup site, or otherwise just reach out to myself, John, or Will.
My name's Doug Sellner. I'm an independent developer. I'm working on an app right now that addresses office meeting waste. Started liking meetings. It's an app that plugs into Google, Gmail, and Office 365. And we can send surveys to people after meetings, real-time goals, stuff like that. I'm looking for critical Angular developers that want to beta test it or use it, make their own meetings, use it and be critical. So if anyone wants to get a free account, you can start from the whole that using it. I appreciate that. Over here. Thanks.
So that's Doug. Just feel free to.
With that, we'll open up for lightning talks. Does anybody have a lightning talk they'd like to jump up and talk about? Things are going to work, cool things. Then we'll go into the main event, 060 of Angular 2 in Visual Studio with Sam Storie. So we'll hand off to Sam. Go around the applause for Sam. Hello, can you hear me? Bob,
So I'll pass presentation to you,
all right.
and just give us 1 second. Okay.
You need to swap out the
So,
schema.
and it's present to everyone for him. Mute mine.
Okay. Okay. All right, are we good? All right, well, first of all, thank you very much for coming out. I know it's hard on a weeknight to get out. I have young kids, so it's even harder sometimes, but I appreciate you guys taking the time to come out. This is actually my first time presenting, so I really appreciate you taking the time to come out. And if you have any feedback afterwards, what you liked, what you didn't like, anything at all, please come tell me. I want to know. So tonight we're going to talk about 0 to 60 with Angular 2 and Visual Studio. Try to go for a semi-flashy title, but nothing too crazy. I'm a .NET developer by trade, although I do Angular 2 development these days as well. I'm not a JavaScript guy. I did a little bit with Angular 1, but that's not my forte. So just keep that in mind as I'm coming at you with this. My main objective for the talk is, for other folks who are doing .NET development or maybe are familiar with Visual Studio, I want to make sure you don't come away with this impression that well, I have to use different editors to get into this world. You really don't. You can use what you're used to. So, again, I'm Sam Storie. Trying to get a little more involved in the developer community. If you want to connect after this, you want to reach out, please let me know. I'm on GitHub. I don't have a ton out there. Kind of on Twitter. Don't quite get how to use Twitter. Trying to learn. Yeah, you can help me there too. And obviously I've got email. So. All right. So what I want to do is I want to walk us through a really simple app that I developed. It's nothing crazy. You're not developed. But it's an application that lets me basically plug in a zip code. And return back to me. I show it in a graph. I'll show it in a second. But it returns me the last 10 years of weather data for that zip code. That's just the high and low temperatures that are charted. So I wanted to create that because it's a simple app, so it's going to walk through a talk like this. But it's, arguably meaningful. I don't know. But it's something we can kind of latch onto. And so let's just show a quick demo. So I've got it running. This is actually running locally. I'll show you, we'll get to Visual Studio in a second. This is running on my laptop. So I think we've got someone who flew in all the way from Florida, actually, to be here. Just for the talk. Is that yes? Yeah, I heard. That's awesome. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. But for the purposes of the demo, let's pick on a nice zip code. It's usually a little warmer than here. Miami. So again, yeah, it's not doing anything crazy. What is happening behind the scenes is the API, and I'll walk you through that in a second. It's actually making 2 calls. It's making one call to take that zip code and turn it into the latitude and the longitude. And it's making a second call using that latitude and longitude to an API called the Forecast.io API. Kind of an open weather API. That's what actually returns back the weather history. So it takes a couple seconds to run like that, but this is kind of what we'll walk through. So what I want to walk through is we'll start with a basic API, just some exposure to what developing APIs on .NET actually looks like. You may or may not have any exposure to that. And then we'll jump to the native API without the Angular bits, and we'll kind of show you what that looks like. And then we'll jump into Angular itself, Angular 2 added. And then you'll see in that version of it, we're not going to have any error code handling. And then we'll go through and add that. I'm going to get some flavor of, okay, we're not going to do a lot of coding in this, but you get some flavor of what Visual Studio brings to the table. All right. So the technology you're going to see as we go through this is obviously Visual Studio. So I'm using Visual Studio 2015. I happen to have a version of it called the Professional Edition. There's a couple of levels of it, but the key thing with Visual Studio, if you're not aware, is it's totally free. It's a version called the Creator Edition. In years past, it used to be somewhat limited, and they've kind of changed all that. Microsoft has done a really tremendous job of being more open, much more open source friendly. So in their flagship product Visual Studio, you can go right now and download it for nothing. Our API itself, we're going to be developing on the .NET stack. So what that means is for the API, we're going to use something called Web API. That's Microsoft's library for building REST APIs. We'll kind of walk through that. It's a component of what they call ASP.NET, which encompasses a whole suite of web-related technologies. We're not going to touch on all those, we're just going to use the API piece. And then we won't see too much of it now, but for routing within the website, not the API necessarily, but the website we're going to use to host our Angular code. I use Nancy. Nancy is just a super lightweight routing library. You can use MVC, which is something you may have heard of. That's their big iron, server-side routing library. I actually don't think I think it's a little too RS. I'm not saying it's not powerful, but I just don't have a need for it. And two, I like to host those applications in what they call the Owen pipeline. Owen is the standard that Microsoft develops called the Open Web Interface, I think is what it is. And all it is, it basically lets you set up a simple pipeline. So that when you have requests coming into your server, you can separate what's actually hosting those from what actually needs to happen. So it's kind of like if you've done any work with Redux, this idea that it's really like I can have state changes that occur, and I can use, they call them middleware, to do things before or after I actually do something. Owen is very similar. So what it means is I can have an Owen pipeline, and then you'll see the code, I'll literally just bolt in my API that will work. And then they request coming into my web server, web API, I get a chance to pick those up and act on. Nancy is right in the place to make some Owen as well. So what's actually going to happen is maybe API will get a shot at the request first, and if it decides, hey, I'm not going to handle this, it'll pass it down the pipeline, and then Nancy will get a chance to pick it up. And of course, we'll do Angular. We'll have some Angular in there as well. And I'm going to focus on Angular too. But again, the point is real quick. I'm going to walk you through kind of a whole version of the API to get you some exposure. Then we'll jump to the complete API just to show you how, it's not the most trivial thing, but it's really not a lot of code. I know there's a lot of frameworks that build these APIs with not a lot of code. But web API is no exception there. And then we'll walk through the actual Angular 2 application. At this point, we'll get a chance to see all the various config files and things you need to set up your Angular 2 apps as soon as you come into play. And I'll show you how Visual Studio has some nice support for editing a lot of those files. And then finally, we're going to add some error handling to the UI. So that'll be the bit where we actually do a little bit of coding. All right, so with that, I'm not really a slide heavy presenter, so that's going to be basically it. So we're going to jump to Visual Studio now. And I've got, maybe I'll get a link to this at the end, but I've got all the code that you'll see in this demo is in a GitHub repo. And I've tagged it at various steps. So you can come and get the repo if you want later on, but I'm going to use those tags as we go through. So I'm just going to be jumping ahead in time with every repo, so you'll see me do that. So to start, let's get into our first version of the API. Now I want to make sure I don't change this. All right, so if you've never seen Visual Studio, is that big enough to see? It's actually kind of small. So make sure. A little bit more readable. I can't. That's what I can pick up this. The actual fonts in the files, I can pick those up more. All right. So with an Owen pipeline, web API, is that readable? A little bigger? All right. If it's not, let me know if you pick that up. Well, web API is really a main piece that you define to kick off kind of what happens in your application. And it's a convention-based mechanism where we have this class called startup, and a method called configuration. Now, who's done any .NET development? Is there some? Who's never seen .NET code at all? Okay. Who's done Java that hasn't seen .NET code? Okay, a little bit. So it's actually, conceptually, I think it's quite similar. I mean, they're both machine languages. We've got classes that have methods. So the only pipeline that's going to pass in is app builder object. And this is how we use the bolts on your middleware. And what I like with my applications, if I build APIs like this, is ultimately I would have the same website host this API, but also host the website. And the website is what I need to actually, publish those Angular files. And what we'll do in that eventually is we're going to use Webpack to compile them down into some JavaScript files that I've published. So web API can't host it for me, but Nancy can. So with my APIs, I'd like to map them to a subpath like /API. And with Owen, it makes it super easy to do this. It's just this map call. I give it the route. And then I have this API object. This is an anonymous method, so C# in this case supports anonymous methods quite well. It creates a configuration object. I'm mapping action routes. Basically, you'll see in a second in my controllers, my API, I can kind of define the routing at that point. Web API will also use convention-based routing if you want to. Don't worry about this later, but you'll come to that in a second. And then this is kind of an example of plugging in Web API. So the bottom I have this API object. I really call it Web API. And I give it that configuration object that kind of builds up. At this point, that's all you need to do. Now, of course, request comes in and needs something to actually handle it. So you need to create a web API these controllers. You derive this object called API controller. You can see a couple of things on this. We have a rel prefix. So this is kind of defining, okay, what tab in the request does it need to match for this code to actually run. So I have a rel prefix, which lets me define a class level. And then at the method level, yes, this is a convention-based system. So it's basically a map to an HTTP. Yeah. Out of the box. You don't have to follow the convention if you don't want to. We're giving it just to keep it simple. So basically what it means is I'm going to have if someone calls slash pictures, this code is going to run. Now it does create the current date time into objects, and it returns it as a 200 response via this OK. So this OK method is kind of funny looking. It's just a way API convention to return a 200 to the client. And it will automatically serialize any object you pass it. So this kind of does all the work of mapping it to JSON or XML, depending on what the client requests. Now, in fact, when I run this to show that it works, I can't go to the slash temperatures because I did that mapping at the top. So we actually have to go to slash API slash temperatures. And there's nothing handling the root request right now, and that's why we get the 404. So we'll just go to API slash temperatures. Just to show you that the thing is actually working. Now, it's probably a little funny, right? I just got XML back, which is like, what the hell's going on? I don't want XML. But that's just because Chrome docs the system is calling it on JSON. The way the API will return objects either format or as XML. It's really flexible. All it has is the date time. All right. Any questions about that? If you have questions, please feel free to speak up. I'll get that.
That's on top of functionality, right? Like web history, web history, web.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so this will reflect over the class itself. You give a bigger object so you can jump around. There's a couple Visual Studio supports what they call extensions. So I've got a couple free ones I've added to this. One is called the productivity color tools, which if you saw at the beginning, it's the presenter mode. That gives you functionality like that. And a bunch of other stuff as well. Like you see, I have these vertical lines that are kind of telling me the scope of my open and close brackets. There's a bunch of other things it adds. The other one, we'll get to this in a second. The other one is something that lets me automatically pull in my NPM, my package.json file. It's kind of let you run if you have a package.json right into Visual Studio. So there's a lot of cool stuff. You see, I have this other one called ReSharper. I actually have this disabled for this demo. ReSharper is not a free product, so it wasn't worth kind of showing it. But that's another one. Like, some people hate these productivity tools, and some people love them. I love them to help me out, but you can plug that into a tool like this, and it's awesome. I didn't say yeah, I should. I'm not like a Visual Studio zealot. I'm not saying you should be using it. I use Visual Studio Code. I use Sublime, and I use whatever tool makes sense. That's my goal. Expose you to this in case you've never ever seen it. All right, so let's go ahead and let's skip forward to the completed area. What's happening over here is swapping out the code right in that folder for me. Visual Studio just realizes, hey, something changed. You want to reload everything, and I usually say, yeah. What I'm doing. Sometimes. All right, so here's the completed API. This is everything we need. There's no Angular here. There's Nancy's been added to this. This is everything we need to actually do the real functionality. So our configuration where we started is a little bit longer now, but it's not too crazy. I've got some things that will take these serialized objects that I'm using, so the .NET classes. When we serialize them, I want to make sure they do camel casing just to kind of follow the JavaScript conventions. So out of the box, I need to add a couple lines of code to support that. I've got Swagger added. I'll talk about that in just 1 second. And then here's an example of I've got Nancy now. So Nancy is the piece that's going to take traditional HTTP requests and let me serve up web pages for them. So rather than having these API calls run, Nancy lets me actually serve calls up. But this convention with Owen is the same way. I use these APIs to plug in web API, and then I've got use Nancy to plug in Nancy. So this is where you have all these different layers, you plug them in, and the order that you put them in there is the order they will run. So what's happening here is web API, or request comes in, and it gets the first crack at it. And because I've mapped to slash API, basically if a request isn't within slash API, well, API is going to say, well, I'm not dealing with that. This is going to fall through, and then Nancy gets the chance to pick it up and do something with it. So this whole pipeline is pretty powerful stuff. And when I run this studio, it's actually running it in a local instance of IIS. It's called IIS Express. But the thing about Olin is you don't need IIS to host it. You can host it in a console app, which is just a traditional. If you're not familiar, that's I can run it in a console window. Basically, no UI whatsoever. I can host these. You can host them in Windows services. And I've got a blog post out there that talks about hosting an Angular app inside of a Windows service if you ever want to do that. And I'm not showing you the bleeding edge ASP.NET stuff. So ASP.NET Core is kind of the next version of that. It's in RC2 right now. That is built on the .NET Core framework, which is like their first stab at a fully cross-platform framework. So that, and I haven't done, I won't talk about it much because I haven't done much with it, but the idea is you can run that like in a Linux environment, you can run that anywhere. So they're really trying to open this thing up and make it more available. So let's take a look. We've got a couple models added, and these are just .NET classes. So zip code weather, this is the object that we're actually going to return. So this is, of course, when we get to the Angular code, this is what Angular is going to receive and do something with. But we have to define that model here. It's just a plain old class. So we have the zip code, the city, the state, and then we have this. And if you've done any Angular 2 stuff, you've probably seen TypeScript. So this might not look too different from TypeScript. But we've got a list of historical temperature objects. So this is kind of generics. These are called generics. And the historical temperature is just an object that has the date and the low temperature and the high temperature. So we get that chart, like graph, what we're getting back is a list of 10 of these things. Or graph mapping. So let's look at our temperatures control. It's a little more complicated now, but not too bad. So this is actually doing real work. And you'll see a couple things that might look strange. You've never seen this kind of code. So we have these XML comments. This is kind of the .NET convention. Maybe it's a C# convention actually for commenting things up. So if you comment things this way, the IDE in Studio will like pull this stuff in, and you'll see it as you're working with the code. But it also does is it enables that stuff to flow through, and it's published as part of the Swagger spec. Is anybody familiar with Swagger? You guys heard of this? So Swagger is a way. Its purpose, what I understand, is it's really a way to kind of document the functionality of an API in a programmatic way. So to publish a Swagger spec for your API, the idea is that other things can just kind of pull that in and automatically discover what your API is capable of doing. So if you go to Swagger.io, you see tons of examples of this. In the .NET world, there's a library called Swashbuckle. I don't know why they called it, so it's pirate Swashbuckle and Swagger. There's a library that you plug it in, and it will automatically reflect over the code that you've written, and it will produce the spec for you. What's really cool about Swashbuckle is it also gives you a JavaScript client that will run as part of your app that you can use to interact with your API. I'll show you that in a second. But if you put it like some comments like this, these will flow through and they'll be published, they'll be shown with that app. So like it worked for me. What we do all the time is we're developing these APIs and we have developers that need to consume them. Well, basically like correctly, like out of documentation. Not stuff I have to maintain, it's not in the document. Like they can literally hit the API itself, go to a specific route, and they can see the API as it's right there. They can interact with it. We'll see that in a second. So again, if we scroll down a little bit, you'll see a couple of things that added here. We got the zip code added, and then the number of years. So API, if you plug in stuff like this is basically still going to be a GET request. It's going to handle the GET request, but because these are not part of the route is still empty. So these are not part of the URL, but if you pass it as query string parameters, these will come through. Yeah, is there a question?
Okay, so you're mentioning TypeScript and publishing discovery. Are you talking about like the way to publish the discovery of the payload? The JSON payload as a type, like an interface for TypeScript? You know what I'm talking about?
Like TypeScript?
I'd like to develop my POC in the API and have the return type there.
Yeah.
And then have automatically inside TypeScript.
Yeah, we'll give you a typed one, but it'll give you an untyped one.
Oh,
we'll see that in just 1 second. The typed one would be awesome. That would be nice. Swagger goes open source too. So if you get more with your projects, I'll show you that in just 1 second.
I do that in my project if you want to talk to me later.
yeah.
Well, I want to talk to you too.
Yeah.
All right, so we're calling a method basically data mapping from zip code to geocode. This is just kind of data code, so I won't work on this too much. But again, all this code out there if you want to see it. We're basically making API requests to a zip code API, which is what we use to map that. If everything works out, we get an object back, and then we come in and I just create an artificial range from 0 to the number of years, and we make calls to the forecast.io. The forecast.io, they've got their own library that someone had written, so I'm just taking advantage of that, and that will make the request for me. And then the last bit, we've got Nancy added here. Now, we're not going to dwell on Nancy a little bit, but just if you've never seen it, like if I want to map a view to like the root URL of my site, like this is the Nancy code to do it. Like it's just ridiculously simple. Now, obviously it gets more complex for real life, but not that much more complex. In our view, I'll just show you that. That's an HTML document. So we're kind of prepping to add in the Angular bit. So I've got my Angular root tag, which doesn't do anything because there's no integrator here. But we'll see that Nancy's working. So again, I can run this. And we'll load it up. So now this Nancy. Now at this point, I do it. Let me switch this. It started it on the HTML page. Let's make sure we're actually hitting the site. Okay, so it's running. So now Nancy's taking over. So it's actually displaying this web page, and I'll still look at Swagger or Swashbuckle. So this is Swashbuckle. This is just sick stuff. When I found this, I was like, I don't have to write documentation anymore. This is awesome. All right, so what's showing me here, if I this collapses down out of the gate, right? So it'll tell me, okay, I've got a rough temperatures. This string right here, this can rest in those XML comments. So again, if your comments are up to date and they're refreshed, like this tool will pull them in. These implementation notes came right out of those XML comments. Just to jump back to the code, I can actually take a look. We can see. So there's a summary tag. This is .NET comment convention stuff. But summary, that's what shows up in the top level box there. And these remarks are what show up in those implementation details. And if I go in, it's going to tell me right out of the gate, okay, if I get a 200 back, here's what the schema is going to look like. So here's your untyped response object. Well, I guess it's actually kind of typed, but not necessarily. And if you're a .NET guy, you can also click on this, and here's the .NET class. I'll show you that as well. So that's all well and good, but what's really cool about this is we can actually interact with the thing right in here. It'll tell you which parameters are optional, which ones are not. So that's actually going to come along. You can see I got kind of small and put this in code and I'm actually loading, but here's the data that came back. Right, so if you've never seen this, I don't know. I mean, Swagger's open. It's not a .NET thing. It's not a web API. Swagger's an open spec. I don't know what other like Swashbuckle like libraries exist for other environments, but if they're out there and you're not using them, you might check them out. This is just awesome. And this also can play nicely with OAuth. So if you've got, using OAuth to authenticate your APIs, I'm not doing it here because it's a simple example, but if you're doing that, this will play nicely with that as well. So you can do that. And then just one last thing on the Visual Studio side, and then we'll jump to the Angular stuff. This is show you if you've ever seen it, just some of the power of Visual Studio. So this is actually running, right? It's running right now. I can still go through the code. Here's my methods. I can see that. And I can also set breakpoints. So breakpoints is the functionality of Visual Studio where you can do debugging right in there, right? So I'm going to put a breakpoint in this controller here. Let's go back to Swagger and let's kick off that request again. You can see down here, I got this little flash, right? Tell me, hey, something's going on. What's happening is it's actually broken the code right there. So, debug sense it didn't break the code, but it stopped it for me. So when I did that, I have diagnostic tools, right? So this is just showing me how much memory I'm using. I can see what events are happening, so it's telling me, hey, breakpoint. I can step through code. You can still similar stuff within Chrome, right? It might be similar something if you debug JavaScript in the browser, right? But you can do this in the .NET code as well. So I can step over, and what's kind of cool about this is you can really dig in and see exactly what's going on. You can do conditional breakpoints, you can do all kinds of fun stuff with this. So you can really get a good sense of if your code is working while you're debugging it. And I'm not showing you in this demo, but Visual Studio also has just really good support for testing as well. Right? So you can set up your tests, and it has a nice UI to help you manage those. So let that run through, and again, we get our response back. So any questions about that stuff so far?
It's making
Making
sense.
sense? Is it don't care? Not interesting.
Get to the
Angular stuff.
All right. I know
it's
it's
an
Angular
Angular
group.
group.
I want to get some sense of what's possible with this. Because
We're
we're
going to use,
it
of course, the same IDE to go in and start building our Angular stuff.
So if
If
you're
you're
doing
doing
.NET
development, it's pretty cool.
All right,
So let me jump ahead one more step. All right, so now our project's going to look a little bit busier, but not too much. So what have we added? So at this point, we've got a fully functional Angular 2 app in here. So there's a couple files that have been added that you probably are familiar with. So our package.json. You know, Visual Studio has good support for package.json. You know, it's color syntax. There's IntelliSense. I'll show you that in a second. We've got our TS config, right? Because what we want is to compile our TypeScript code down. So the TS config file will determine how that works. So Visual Studio is smart enough where if you have one of these in your project, it picks that up and it will use this to drive everything. Out of the box, Visual Studio supports TypeScript. You don't need a TS config. You can just write TypeScript files and it will compile them down for you. But I don't want it to do that in this case. We have our typing.json. I'm not going to look at that today. And then we've got our Webpack config file. So we'll get to Webpack in just a second. But then here's our app. So I still have our API, right? So it's the same code base. Here's our Angular stuff. So Angular has got support, rich support for TypeScript. Visual Studio supports that right out of the gate. So we'll get to the Angular stuff in just a second, but I want to show you some of the things you can do with Visual Studio that you may not be familiar with. So I mentioned that out of the box, Visual Studio supports package.json. So what I mean by that is, you know, obviously the text highlighting, that's kind of nice. But you also get IntelliSense. So if I start typing, it'll literally start querying the NPM repository or any other repos you've configured and start pulling out packages that match what you're looking for. So if I want to add Lodash, for example, we'll pull out not just the packages, but also the versions. So I can come in here and literally just start picking this stuff up. I don't actually want Lodash, so I'm not going to add it. But the other thing is to start doing it for you. Because when I save this file, I'll just show you the actual, I got ahead of me. It will, I was going to show you how to have build modules before. We can add this instance, okay. When I save this package, out of the gate, it's just the line indicator down here. It's already done, so that was a little quicker. Yeah, so it did it behind the scenes when I opened it. Visual Studio out of the gate, if you don't change this, if you edit packages, it's automatically going to be catching the packages for you. So you're going to change this, it's going to go behind the scenes. So here's the output that you gave me, right? So as I opened it, I might have saved it on accident there. But it'll literally go and load all those packages for you. So if you don't want to manage packages outside of this, you don't have to. I actually like to do this in the real world. I don't really let Visual Studio do this. So I like to have a better idea of what's actually happening. So you can turn it off if you want. But just if you don't, you're not familiar, it doesn't have that capability. Something you need to be aware of. TS config. Similar story with TS config. Full IntelliSense. So it recognizes I'm in the compiler options section. That'll help me write this file if I want to make more changes. You know, it picks up this is a boolean. It'll help you make sure that it moves through this. Out of the box, if you just start using Studio and start adding TypeScript files without any changes to anything, it's going to start compiling this for you out of the gate. What it's going to do is it's going to create JavaScript files just right next to your TypeScript files. And depending on what you have, like if you have TS config me to emit map files as well, it'll create those for you too. And depending on what you're doing, that might be what you want, or it might really not be what you want. So you go to your git changes and it's like, what crap, it's like 50 files that just showed up. I don't want any of those. So I actually like to turn that off. And so there's two things you have to do to get Visual Studio to not do that. One is this compile on save in the TS config. This will basically tell it, hey, when I save a TypeScript file, don't do anything. But that's not enough, because if you just have this, when you actually go to build your solution, which in this case, it's like go to the .NET piece of it. We can change it to build the TypeScript as well, but if you build that, it's also going to build the TypeScript files at that point. So not when you're saving them, but when you build the thing, that's when it's going to do it. So if you need to change that, there's one more step you got to do. And this is going to probably freak you out when you see this, but behind the scenes, Visual Studio uses the concept of solutions and projects. So here I've got one solution. A solution that's where you put a bunch of projects together. And a project, depending on the type, outputs something. So it might be a DLL, a library. or maybe a website, could be a desktop app, could be a number of things. The CS branch files, which are what they are behind the scenes here, they're a bunch of hairy XML. And to edit them, you have to kind of unload the project like that, and then you can come in here and edit it. So these guys, I'm not going here unless I have to. If I'm going through this, it's bad. But if you want to disable this, you need to come in here, one small change, and that's this guy right here. So out of the box, I've mentioned a couple times, TypeScript supports, or Visual Studio supports TypeScript, so you'll just find this TypeScript tool version already there, just put this other tag that says, hey, block TypeScript compilation. Once you get this in there, this is just a one-time thing. Once it's there, you don't have to do it again. But once you get that in there, Visual Studio is just going to completely ignore your TypeScript files. Which, depending on what you're doing, right? If you're using Webpack to compile this stuff or doing something else, that's probably what you want. So just be aware of that. So it's got full support for the TS config. And then Webpack, right? So Webpack in this case is just a vanilla JavaScript file. It does give you syntax highlighting for JavaScript files, but it's not quite as intelligent, right? It's not going to pick up like, oh, this is a Webpack config file. All right, let me give you IntelliSense here towards that. But it'll give you some like node-based JavaScript IntelliSense. Like I said, I'm not a JavaScript guy, so I won't try to mangle my way through showing something tricky there, but I do use Webpack. I like it for a couple reasons. One is it kind of helps me reason about, at least the .NET code, right? This is this compilation process, and so kind of some of this JavaScript fatigue, this overhead that's kind of coming along with stuff like Angular 2 doesn't bother me as much. And so I like having this thing. This helps me drive the build process. And the things I like about this is I can obviously compile TypeScript, but I can use Sass, the CSS. I happen to like that. I'm not good at CSS. I need tools to help me do that kind of stuff. So I use Sass to do that. And in the case of this demo, we're using not only Sass, but I'm taking it and passing it through post CSS. And the reason I use post CSS is because I can take advantage of a plugin with post CSS called Auto Prefixer, which lets me take, look at your CSS tags you're using. It will make sure it adds different variants of them for all the different browsers you might need to support. You can get really fancy. But I have it here just because I happen to use Flexbox. So that's like the one CSS piece I'm actually now. Yeah. Thumbs up, all right. I try to use Flexbox. So it's supposed to be super easy, but it's still maddening for someone like me. But it lets me take that and add all the variants for IE or for Safari or whatever it might be. And the last bit I use for this is I use raw loader. And the reason I do this is because my Angular components, I want to take advantage of what they call view encapsulation. So if you've never seen this, if you go to like NGConf this year, they had a really good presentation by a guy named Justin Schwarzenberg. He gave a talk on view encapsulation. The idea behind it is that you can create CSS rules that are specific to a single Angular 2 component. So you can have the exact same name, your CSS classes can be named exactly the same as the other ones in your project, but that CSS will apply only to that component. And it does this, you can either use what they call shadow DOM, and I'm not going to pretend to be knowledgeable of shadow DOM. But what's nice is that you use this thing called, I think it's simulation mode, where you don't have to use shadow DOM. The idea is usually when you want to use shadow DOM, not every browser supports that yet. I'll show you what that looks like. But the raw loader lets me take this CSS file, process it with CSS, and turn it into a string. The reason I want that is then I can rewire my Angular 2 component, and I can plug it right into the component itself, which is what that component's going to do. I'll show you what that looks like. But this way I can have separate CSS files, I can run them through the Sass pipeline, whatever I want with them, and I can still use view encapsulation. Pretty powerful stuff. And I do the same thing with HTML. So I have HTML loader, which again just lets me take that HTML into a string that I can shove into my component. And this is just auto prefixer. So the last bit I want to show you before we actually kind of look at the Angular code is the Taskbar Explorer. Now, out of the gate, Taskbar Explorer, this is something that they added back when like Grunt and Gulp started to become really popular. This is like, I don't know, maybe 2013, somewhere around there. Well, Visual Studio was kind of behind the curve. They were trying to catch it up. So they released this thing called Taskbar Explorer. It's their way to let you run Grunt, Gulp, tasks within Visual Studio. And they're trying to bridge that gap for people who are used to this and aren't familiar with this old JavaScript code. There's a guy named Mads Christensen. If you start looking at this, he's like this prolific extension writer. He's just sick. He wrote one that lets you basically say the same thing. Remembers this? You use Taskbar Explorer, but it will look at your NPM, your package JSON, and show you all the tasks right out of there. So you can run them right in here. So an example, this is what I have for package JSON. I don't have much, just a couple things I just build, and all it does is run typings. And also to compile it's the TypeScript, you do need a couple shims added to your environment, otherwise the compiler's not going to be happy. And then I run it through Webpack. So if typings installed correctly, I run it through Webpack. So if I go to my Taskbar Explorer, see those build tasks show up down here. I can literally just double click this guy. And again, I don't necessarily do this when I'm working day to day, but it's possible. This is going to run that, and it's going to show me, I'll just try this in here a little bit. Doesn't want to go down. All right, well, you can kind of see it's a little bit small. No, I can't keep it up. It basically ran a Webpack config and produced two bundles. Or sorry, produced one bundle on the associated map file. So for this project, we're going to take all the Angular code and shove it into one JavaScript file. But you can use this. You can do this with the command line, which is what I normally do. But you can also do it in here. What's kind of cool is if you wanted to, you can combine these things. These are actions that appear within the studio itself. So I could say, okay, for some reason I wanted to, whenever I build my .NET code, I want to run something for my npm config, I can do that. And then let's just do it here. So I'll do it before build. So let's say, okay, if I build my project, I want build tasks and npm or package JSON to run. That's going to add this kind of special tag that Visual Studio is going to pick up. So again, if you want to do that, you can do it. You don't have to. I normally don't, but it's possible. All right, any questions about that something? Still with me? That's a freak out. Not going to go download it though. I'm not, like I said, I'm not an evangelist. All right, so let's look at some of the Angular code. So on the Angular side, we have, I'll make a small assumption that maybe you've looked at Angular 2 a little bit, but if you haven't, just stop me, I'd be happy to talk about some of that stuff. But with Angular 2, you kind of have to bootstrap the application. So in our view, let's just go back to our Nancy view really quick. I'll just show you. It's slightly different now, not that much different. We still have our root tag, right? So with this Angular app, I'm defining it where I'm going to bootstrap the Angular app that has a tag called my weather app. So that's why that's there. And now we're including our app bundle because that's being built by Webpack. And then I'm pulling in just the chart library. This is how I show the chart. Depending on what you're doing, you might want to pull this in as a package so it's actually compiled and shoved into your bundle as well, but you don't have to. So we go to main.ts. This is the starting point of Angular app. So here's where you actually call your bootstrap method. So with Angular right now, this is using RC1. So the current release version, I think RC2 might be dropping maybe next week. I think is that a rumor? But we'll see. But this is using RC1. So we have to import a couple things. We import Bootstrap, and we import HTTP providers, which is kind of basically saying, okay, we're saying Angular, I want to make HTTP calls. I need to pull these things in. And then I'm importing my app component. And when I call Bootstrap, I'm telling it to use that app component as the root component, and then kind of just telling it to provide, include all the HTTP bits that I might want. So let's look at app component. This is just a vanilla component. So if you look at the style guide or something, I might tell you to break some of this out right now just because it's a demo. So the component's got this selector. So here's my weather app. This is the tie, right? So this is kind of how I know, okay, when this thing bootstraps, when I tell it to use this component, Angular is going to look for a tag with my weather app. That's how it knows where to put, to shove the Angular code in there. And then here's where, so there's directives and there's some code. It's not too complicated. It's not too interesting either. We'll edit it in just a second. But here's where you do that view encapsulation. So within a component, you have this style tag where you can plug in. If you don't do this, it's just going to use whatever styles are available in the context of the browser. If you add this is where you can do that view encapsulation. And so here's where I can do require, right? So the Webpack config can let me do this. So when I require this with a CSS file, this is basically going to turn into a string when it compiles this thing down. And then I can plug it into this array. Within a component, it's going to want an array like that. Sorry, that array is going to want a string as the argument. And the same thing with the template. Let's require my HTML template. The code itself, we've got just some variables here. We're injecting HTTP in the constructor. You can kind of see nice syntax highlighted. I'll show you the IntelliSense in just a second. It's not too much different than Visual Studio Code. And I think behind the scenes, actually, VS Code and Visual Studio use the exact same routes on the compiler to do the TypeScript stuff. So I think they're actually using the same technology behind the scenes. So if you're using VS Code, this is going to look very different in terms of what you can do. But load weather, basically, I click that button or I hit enter. Load weather, this is the method that calls. We'll see that in a template in a second. So we're just making a call to our own API at this point. Telling it just give me a service that I need. And then when the data comes back, I'm basically using a technique. If anyone's doing this kind of thing, let me know. But this technique, basically what happens is, when I make the call, I get JSON back. But I've got TypeScript code. So depending on what your TypeScript classes have in them, having just this JSON, I can usually just run it by my code really fine. But if I have methods or something on that, unless I actually create an instance of the TypeScript class using that JSON, you're going to have things that are not in the object when you run it at one time. So it'll compile all those things fine, but then when you go to run it, it'll be like, oh, method's not there. So this is a technique that I use. If you do this, and you got a better one, please let me know. But I basically create these mappers. So these are just classes. This is just kind of an analogous thing to the .NET process that you have. This is just standard TypeScript. Again, you have the same kind of generic, have an array, and I'm telling it it's an array, it's a particular class. But then here's where those mappers live. So the mappers, these guys take any, so this is basically the type of way of saying there's no constraint on this object coming in, because it's really just JSON. That's going to try to, does an object assign that basically is where we actually create the new instance of the TypeScript class. Then use object assign, you can use Lodash as well, but this basically says, okay, take every property from X, which X is the argument I provided in, so every property from the JSON that I got back from the API, and assign it to some objects. So I think I could be wrong, but the property names match, that's the key to basically say, okay, I'll take that and shove it over. But this also means basically I can create a TypeScript instance of something at runtime and then copy all the data over. And then if you have methods under TypeScript, you have headers or things like that, they can all work. And I do a similar method for arrays. So the historical temperature, that comes back from the API as an array. So I have this from array method as well. And all this does is basically use map on the array, and it just calls the mapper for each individual object. So that's kind of what's going on there. But when you see it in the component, that's what's happening. So we get back the data from the API, and I turn it into an actual TypeScript instance by calling from objects. In response to JSON, this is the angular way of getting the actual JSON body out of a response that you back. Then I'm just storing that so they show up correctly. So I want my graph, I want the data left, the oldest date, and then progress. So I'm using a sort method on that, and then we're just setting up some data for the labels. Oh, sorry for the chart. So the chart needs labels to show on the axis and then the actual data. All right, so if we run this, just to show you this still works. Actually, so what I do is Nancy has a convention where we'll look in the content folder. You can change it, of course. We'll look in the content folder for any files that should be statically served up. So when I do Webpack compilation, that's when I put those files. And again, you don't have to say anything. This makes the code simpler here. So I've got the bundle here. But if you didn't have these actually added to the projects, before you did this, you want to make sure you actually did your compilation. In this case, it's already been done. So I can go ahead and run this now. Now with this particular demo, Nancy will actually be serving up the same HTML, but now it's going to include our add bundle JavaScript file. And so we should actually see the start of the application. Just to show you, I can't make this bigger. I don't think. I apologize if that's really small, but you can see, okay, now Angular 2 is actually running. I can do this. Right, so I can see Angular 2 is running. So now we're kind of locked in. That's pretty good. So we'll do our same thing. Well, this is making sure nothing broke. So working. Right, and my fancy Flexbox knowledge, right? So this takes up half the screen. This is why I find adding those exercises. It's like, okay, it doesn't actually work. So sometimes there's hours of my life to figure that crap out. Don't do data. every tutorial you read, right, it's like Flexbox is a solution for everything, and like a lot of ways it is, but then it's like, it works. All right, so there's that. So one thing we want to actually add, right, to show you some of the editing is that, you know, so if I let's just repeat that, make sure I'm not making this up. This thing actually works, right? But if I type in something that doesn't make any sense, right now the app isn't doing it to me, right? I have the console level, so you can see that, okay, it did make a call. Got 400, I can actually click on that. Let's look at the, oops, sorry. There it is. So I can see what it gave back to me, actually, is a message. This came from my API. So it's giving me back this object, a property message that basically tells me I could have mapped a zip code. So what happened is the API sent it to the first API that wanted the zip code to lat long mapping, and that failed. So it's returning this back to me. So what I want to do is actually add something to make this actually show for the user. All right. I'm actually going to keep Visual Studio running, right? So the app is still running. As it's running, you can do certain things. You can, depending on the type of file, you can edit things. Like I can't edit my .NET code when I do this, because that would have to be recompiled, excuse me, and rerun. But it kind of understands that the TypeScript stuff, that's a little looser, right? So it's going to let you edit that stuff. I can edit my styles, I can edit my HTML. I can even edit my Nancy view. It's not going to stop me from doing any of that. So what I want to do is I want to have an error occur, and I want to give you some indication that actually happened. So there's a couple things I'm going to have to add to support this. One is I want to add a property on my component. There's probably a better way to do this, so I'm just going to have a property called error message. I want this to be a string. And you can see the IntelliSense, right? It's starting to pick up some of this. You probably want a string. How much is that? Yeah, that's exactly what I want. And when I kick off load weather, I just want to make a quick statement here to say, let's assume if I'm loading the weather, I'm just going to flush out any error that I had before. So here I want to do error message, and it's saying, oh, you got a property that's close to that, right? I just want that. In fact, I do. And I'm just going to make it undefined. Right? So the last bit that I want is when everything goes great, it's just going to stay undefined. There's nothing wrong there. But if I get an error from the HTTP call, here's where I want to actually do something. So again, I want to do this .error message. In this case, the error, I want to do the JSON to give you the data back. Now, JSON at this point is going to be any. A type of any, right? So at this point, TypeScript is saying, I have no idea what that's going to be. So it's up to me to figure that out. Now I happen to know that object has a property called message on it. That's a string. That's actually what I want to use. So I'll do message. Okay, now it's happy. So we've got the component updated with that information. Now, of course, we need to do something with it. Let's go to our template. So you kind of saw that in TypeScript editing, right? It's got nice support for TypeScript. Visual Studio also has pretty good support for HTML. So that's actually what I want to do. This is just a real dumb technique, but basically I have these flags to say if these properties are undefined or not. Just different tags will get shown. Nothing crazy here, right? So that's how when I launch it, if loading suddenly becomes true. Well, this is a Boolean. Loading is a Boolean, right? It'll show this loading thing. Otherwise, when it's done, it turns it off. And here, what I want to do is add another div to support the error message. So let's do div. And I'm just going to, because I know what I'm doing, I'm going to add a class called error. Not that I know what I'm doing, but I know what the demo's going to do. And I want to do my same ngIf, right? So I want to go ng. It's kind of helping me write this, right? I happen to know that the property I care about is error message. It's going to close it off for me. And then I actually do error message. Right? So if error message suddenly takes a value, this is going to get shown. It's going to be given the class of error. And then we'll actually do this. So the one thing it's not going to help you do is it's not going to check and say, hey, does error message actually exist on your component? That's kind of the one you get. Whether you do it like this or you do it as an inline, you can put your template right in the component as well. If you do it there, there's still not really support, to my knowledge, to tell you like, hey, you're trying to use a property from your component that doesn't exist. I think they're working on that. I think that's going to be coming. They're trying to figure out, okay, when I compile things down, can I actually pick up that you're doing things that are not going to work? But it's not there yet. So the last bit, so this will actually show me the error message that comes back. So the last bit we need to do is actually add the CSS. So again, I'm using view encapsulation. So this CSS is going to apply only to this component. Now I only have to have one component. It's not too crazy. But just be aware, if you're using that technique, I can use whatever names I want here, and it will never ever touch another component. It will not affect anything else. So what I want to do is this is a SAS file, right? So I want to actually use variables here. I'm not a SAS expert, but I want to define a couple of variables. I want to do an error. Let's call one error background. Let's say I want to do red. And I want to do error color. And then let's do white. Save that down. I think, let's see if it will let me. Yeah, so you can also, rather than using the keywords, you can start doing your hex values as well, right? So I can go FF0000. But it will also, you see it kind of pop this up, right? So it gives me the ability to actually pick something. And what's kind of cool is you can actually go into this full-on color picker. You can really get crazy, right? So as I'm changing the color, it's just going to update that for me automatically. You know, so if you're just trying to explore something like, yeah, I kind of want that color, right? It'll help you do that. And if you do opacity, it switches into the RGBA method. You know, so it's kind of a neat little editor. You're probably not going to be doing that every time you change color, but you know, see where it's there. We should also be able to do red. So I want to actually add my error class. So I'm going to do an error. And let's just say I want to have a margin top. And again, I have to sensitive. The margin top, let's just say I want 20 pixels. Let's give a padding to the thing of 10. And then I'll change the background color. Here's what I can actually use that variable. As soon as I start typing this, it knows, oh, okay, using SAS. I understand what's going on. I want the background, and I want color. Not that. Error, no color. That's like I can save that down. Now at this point, I'm not doing Webpack Watch, so I could run Webpack Watch. I want to save that, push it up, and it would just recompile everything. But I'm not, so I want to actually just run this build again. So let that run one more time. Yeah.
So if you, can you use SAS variables in like a single file? Like if you're just doing like an abstract file, and then you put all your variables in one file, and then you still have your translation, but it reads stuff from the one file.
Yes.
You can do that.
Yeah. All right, so we've got our updated file. Let's go over here and let's refresh our page. Now, in some contexts, Visual Studio will actually support, they call it live sync or browser sync. Kind of like, you know, reloading or these other techniques, right, where I can just change my code and my browser's just like magically there. That kind of breaks down when you're getting away from MVC, using their MVC library, I believe. So you get to this one pipeline like Nancy, some of that stuff doesn't really work. I'm not showing you any of that, but. So let's make sure our thing still works. Oh, sorry, we'll pay homage to the All right, so that's still works, right? Let's try with any luck. Oh, it didn't work. So why didn't it work?
Save your file.
Thank you. These are awesome. You could have lost 10 minutes of your life with that. Yeah, we'll give that a chance to compile again. There we go. All right, so nice. So pretty slick. So with that, you can kind of get a small flavor of just give you some exposure. Like, hey, this Visual Studio product, right? It's powerful. It's pretty nice, and it plays nicely with Angular too. You don't have to use these super lightweight editors if you don't want to. Now, there's also cases, as I mentioned, where I don't use Visual Studio because it's just nicer to put up code and I don't have no big deal. All right, so one last minute. So are we okay on time? Are we running long?
No, it's 8:02 right now, so you're good, man.
All right. Why don't we just cut it off there? I was going to show kind of this Visual Studio's integration with Azure, just like the cloud offering, just to give you a sense of like if you want, it's super simple to push stuff up to their cloud offering. But maybe that's a talk for another day. So again, if you want the presentation and all the code is available on GitHub, that's the short link. Always just go to github.com/storie.
These links are in the description for tonight's meetup too. So
Great, thanks. Yeah, like I said, I'm trying to get into the community a little more. So if you liked what you saw, please let me know. If you didn't, please let me know. I want to know that more. But thanks a lot for coming out. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. That was a great presentation.
One thing, Sam, is you can command plus and minus.
Yeah, that's
on the right
definitely
side from the-
Yeah.
That's fine for your focus.
Oh, really? So you just go, you focus, and then it's,
There you go.
I was trying to do the scroll wheel, which, well, that works too. Oh, it was the focus. I didn't give it focus.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that tip. I did not know that. Well, I should say, any other questions? I kind of cut it off there. I apologize.
It's a bit off.
Yeah.
Isn't there, it's not sure like a group or something.
Yeah, Azure is Microsoft's cloud offering. So you think about AWS, it's their flavor of it. So in Azure, you can host an insane amount of stuff. I don't think it's, I think AWS and Amazon are kind of a head start on the whole cloud game. So Azure has kind of been catching up, but they've been like rapidly catching up. So with Azure, you can have websites, you can have web apps, you can have, AWS has a thing called Lambdas, which is like just running code without a server at all. Azure has their variant called functions. There's all kinds of stuff. But it makes it, I mean, I like about Azure, the interface, I can show you. I'm actually still. Show you the portal. Give you a flavor of it. Azure has really nice integration with Visual Studio. Now, if you're writing a production app, you're probably not going to push code right from Visual Studio. You'll probably use a continuous integration pipeline. There's a bunch, but like this is the Azure dashboard. This is an example. So this is like a one-stop shop of like the status of my personal page, which is not very popular, and my blog, which is also not very popular. Although this posted one article to Reddit Web Dev Day, and it got me a little bit of attention, but really not that much. But anyway, this is like, this is the view of Azure, right? So it's really kind of your own stuff. It's really there, if you want to host something in the cloud, that's Microsoft's offering to do it. They've got a free tier in there as well, so you can do a lot. If you ever like read about Scott Hanselman, he's a big blogger personality in the Microsoft world. He's got all kinds of good tutorials and stuff about Azure if you want to check it out. You know, if you're not familiar with the cloud yet, it's one of the offerings you can take advantage of.
The free offering doesn't support these.
If you want to use, I'm not an expert. If you want to use SQL Server as your database, I don't know if there's a free offering there. If you just want to host a website, they can do that. If you're a .NET guy, the reason I use it is because through work I do .NET development, so we have what's called an MSGM subscription. It's kind of like the developer network. You know, depending on the level you have, you get a certain amount of Azure credits for free every single month. So I mean, I can literally host everything I do. It doesn't cost me a dime. But their offering is relative. Like I said, there's free tiers. Even if you pay, not that expensive. I don't know how it compares to AWS because I don't use AWS. It might be more expensive than that. I'm not sure. No, good question. Anything else? We're great. Well, guys, thanks again for coming out. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, all right. We're going to do the raffle giveaway. You guys
Do I need to like turn off my screen then, or do you guys already take it over?
Yeah, we know we took it over.
Okay.
It wasn't coming out.
Are you just going to plug yours in, Joel, or do you want me to do it?
Okay, we're going to do the raffle. You got everything set up. Yeah, I will echo everything Sam's saying about Azure. I don't know how to say it. I can't say it correctly, but I met some of the team out at NG Vegas last year, and a bunch of really passionate folk about cloud computing and making really good products. So I'll echo that. DigitalOcean is also really good. I just bought some space off of it. So the prizes that we have tonight are 2 tickets to Open Source North. Do you want to do those first?
Yeah, we can do this. We just have email. We just need to collect email addresses for that and then send them off to the organizer.
And then we also have a year sub for Front-End Masters. Are we doing 2 of those?
2 of those tonight.
2 of those. A month sub for Pluralsight.
No more of those.
No more of those. No month sub.
Yeah, they stopped sending those.
Okay. Pluralsight, you're off the list. Front-End Masters, we're doing 2 now. What am I missing?
Front-End Masters.
JetBrains. And a coupon for a year of JetBrains products, whatever one that you can do in one transaction, which turns out is pretty much all of them for a year. So if you're programming in 11 different languages, you're all set. Okay, so go ahead and the Prizatron just pulls in the Meetup API and you RSVP. Amazing Prizatron, so it gets bumped to the top of the list. It's alphabetical, so it's now amazing. So I'm good. So first up, Matt Blum.
Your first choice. So.
Are we going to open up Open Source North just as a choice? Yeah, I guess if you can't make it.
Yeah, because some people might not be able to make
Sure.
it.
So you've got,
it's kind of short notice.
Yep. So you got JetBrains products, which are a bunch of IDEs or code editors. You got Front-End Masters, which is a local company done by Mark Urbanski that gets talent from all over the nation, the world, to do a lot of really great content. Online learning is one of the better places, in my opinion.
I'll be JetBrains.
JetBrains.
I'll get your email before you leave.
Yeah, if you win a prize, make sure to get your email to us before you leave.
Can you pronounce that?
JL021275. Shame on you, whoever you are. That's a clever tactic. Craig, I know Craig's here. What would you like to choose, sir? Mark does not like that at all. So no. Do you have a current free subscription or current paid? Current paid right now? Then we can probably do that. We can't tack 2 free ones back to back.
No. I've got it.
Yeah, we can just give you the token, and then once yours runs out, you can do another year. You can tack it onto this.
Okay.
Teleday's taken, Open Source North ticket for Thursday. Front-End Masters, okay. 1 Front-End Masters, 1 to go, and then we still have 2 Open Source North tickets. Jordan. I know Jordan, did not see him here. Shame. Jordan's a nice guy, so he just gets 1. Anna Baker.
What time is it on Thursday?
It's all day.
It is, yeah, it starts in the morning. It goes till like 5.
Do that. Sorry, what else is left?
Front-End Masters.
Master's license, it's a year sub.
Sure.
It's like a $500 value. It's really good deal. All right, so Front-End Masters off. All we have is Open Source North tickets on the table.
Yeah, he said we might have trouble getting those away because it's so short notice. So,
Oh no, we're doing it. We'll click this thing 100 times. Are you available Thursday?
Oh, that was a year of a day of programming?
It's a conference, Open Source North.
Open source.
Was there a penalty option on that?
Those are the last 2 giveaways we have.
You are able to pass.
I'm able to pass.
You're not able to pass. You have to go now. Can't see So yeah, it's just a conference put on by a bunch of folks, more specifically SDG, all folks in open source stuff. So a lot of JavaScript, a lot of cool content you can go through there.
Yeah, this is their 2nd year. They did their 1st year last fall.
There we go.
This year they have national exposure, so it's actually grown quite a bit.
So
Is that the program for it?
this is the schedule for the conference.
Oh, I'll take that.
You're back?
I'm not passing, I'm unpassing.
All right. All right. He's back. Okay, so
It's a good conference. I went last year.
yeah, it's worth checking out. We went last year. It's very cool. We put a lot of hard work into it. Caitlin. Pass.
Pass.
Unfortunate.
Hey,
Hank,
how are we going?
are you going? Jeff, sweet profile picture. No, Jeff, shame. Shame on putting such hard work into a profile picture. Andy. Andy, shame on you. I don't know what your face looks like. Shame. Nicholas. Here.
Can you go to
Yeah.
Surf North next week, next
Boom.
Thursday? All right.
All right.
Let me
that
get your
is-
email and your.
Yeah, make sure to get your emails to us tonight. Other than that, that is all we got. Thank you all for coming out. Safe travels. Thank you.
You email.
All right.
And you need your email for the Deborah
Yeah.
license. What was your trick you were gonna say?